I mean, I like it in a way, but I do miss like actual spending time with people because I
But
think people use this now to replace that, and
yeah,
it's not nearly the same.
no, but it has brought us closer together, right?
Yeah.
At least it's made the world smaller. Sorry about the lateness, everybody. It was like coffee and some Vegemite on toast, and I was like, just anyway. It's cold as the witches. You know what? Here, and Kendra, you're hot there. You're in Worcester, right? And how hot is it there?
Yeah. When I was at the gym, it was like 92, I think, was the highest I saw on my car. So I don't know what that is in Celsius, but in Fahrenheit, it's really, really hot. So like I was telling you, it's one of those where you just don't even want to step outside. You just
It's
stay in
like
the
a
air
Bikram
conditioning.
yoga. I'm very
Yeah,
pleased. I'm
exactly.
very pleased to see that my friend Van Halen, your bestie, has just tuned in as well. So hello to Kathy
Oh,
Kaufman,
I
Van
got to spend about
Halen.
24 hours with her.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so in between I raced I-70 and then did Eagle, Nebraska. I did a detour up to Knoxville for one day. Um, Very much worth it.
Eddie Shield. Just you could pretty well look out your window and she'd be out there somewhere, wouldn't she? She's tuned in.
Yeah.
She's fighting. Oh,
Yeah.
oh. Aunt Tammy is tuned in. Always love when Tammy is tuned in. Can't wait to see her and Ed at Knoxville this year. Hello to Gary Gooch Ellis, Jim Snow, Shannon King is tuned in as well. This is going to be some fun. You and I have talked about doing this forever, Kendra, and it pretty well never happens just because. Oh, who's Kimberly Smith Jacobs?
Oh, well, apparently figured out how to get on because she called and asked me. So I'm glad that she figured out how to watch.
So Kimberly Smith Jacobs makes the best pumpkin pie as well as the three best children in the world. That was my first experience ever with, would you like some pumpkin pie? This is like 95. I'm like, what is pumpkin pie? You've got to try it. Like pumpkin, a pie, and then whipped cream.
Yeah,
And it's
whipped
like,
cream.
God
She
bless them.
honestly makes the best everything.
Yeah.
Like she's just an amazing cook.
Fat Rat is tuned in. Now you know it's official. If Fat Rat is tuned
Now
in,
we can officially begin now.
also, hello to David Christensen. Now, David Christensen, for many, many years, was the host of Night Thunder, the original, the OG Night Thunder that was on the Seven Network. And he was the head of sport at Channel 7 in Perth and major, major supporter of sprint car racing and Claremont Speedway in Western Australia. Now, when did you get to Claremont? You got to visit Claremont, didn't you, Kendra?
Yeah, I think it was the winter of like 97, 98. I think. It was either 97, 98 or 98, 99.
Okay.
I know I was in college, but I remember specifically I was not yet 21. So it was definitely in that time frame.
And it didn't matter in Australia that you weren't 21
No,
because
no.
that's a big thing. Race Jacobs. Whoa, stop. Winner, winner, winner. Dude just
The
won a
next
race not recently,
generation.
made his poppy very happy, right?
And he just won again the other night. So big Father's Day, Grandfather's Day gift. Um, yeah, race is making us all really proud. So the next generation of Jacobs in a race car and winning, it's fun. It's a little scary. Like now I get it when you're an adult watching, like
Yeah.
it's a little scary. Like I know he wants to get in a 410 at some point this year and test it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're just to me still so young and little. Like I don't
That's the
think
thing that I
that's
love. One of the things I love about you, Kendra, is that when I go to try and source pictures of you, they're ultimately filled with moments like this. Uh,
oh yeah.
awesome, Dawson. Uh, Family is a huge, huge part of your life. There's like family and there's racing, right?
Well, I mean, for so long, so when I graduated college, I immediately moved to Charlotte, North Carolina to work in NASCAR. So I think at last count, and I'm not a math person, as everybody knows. So as at last count, I think I was there for 16 years. So while my family is super important, for 16 years, I wasn't really around them
Yeah.
much at all. I mean, holidays, weddings, that was really about it. So when I moved back to Worcester in 2018, it was like make up for lost time. So, yes, they are the center of everything for me now. I love spending time with my family. I'm very blessed that I have a fun family. So, when I get bored, I'm like, I want to go do something fun. my family is my first thought of who to call and want to do those things with, because they're really just a fun group. And I think part of it too is that being raised in a motorhome when we were kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was back when motorhomes didn't have slide outs, right? Like we basically were raised in a hallway. So when you're raised in a hallway together, like the only friends you have, like my brother and sister were the only friends I really had. And I just talked about this last week to someone, I can't remember who, but I was kind of forced to grow up fast because the only other kids out on the outlaw tour when we were kids were a lot younger than me and Jennifer. So it was either hang out with kids that were a lot younger than us or hang out with the adults that were not a lot older than us, but older. Um, and I think Jennifer and I, as most teenagers would, you gravitate towards the older.
Yeah.
So Jennifer and I really stuck together on everything. And I think mom and dad were brilliant because they knew, like, let them go do their thing because they will always tell on each other. So if one of them does something wrong, we'll always know about it because the other one will tell. And I think for the most part, that did keep us in line. Like, and she's still to this day my absolute best friend. So we just have memories together that we didn't have with our friends growing up. And most people that we meet in life can't relate to how we grew up or how we were raised. So you just kind of cling to those people
Yeah.
that get you. And I think that's with anything in life, but I was blessed that I have a family that gets me, and we were forced to hang out together. We were forced to be best friends and spend time together, and as adults now we choose to.
Lee is a phenomenal school teacher. Mr. Jacobs, who the kids just adore. I saw a video a couple of years ago when the class, I think, was leaving, and they all just lined up down the hallway and did that whole, like it's a Hollywood movie script thing, and cheered him out. And he's an amazing person. Between Jennifer, your sister, and Lee, your brother, I've got to wonder, has the Ken in Kendra card ever been played? Has there ever been an argument at some point where you've thrown it back at them and going, you might think you're the favorite, but my daddy called me Kendra. It's not like Leedra, right? You've got your dad's
Right.
name in your name. Has that ever been played, or have they thrown it back at you?
No, I think honestly, when we were kids, I was the one who probably was not the closest to dad because I didn't race. Jennifer and Lee both raced quarter midgets.
Huh.
So, and I had absolutely no interest in racing whatsoever. So I spent a lot of time with my mom, or we would go to quarter midget races and I would be the girl clear up in the corner of the bleachers with a book. Like I just had no interest in racing.
Wow.
Even going to races when we were young, like racing was not my thing. Like I didn't love it. Um, and as I got to be a teenager and made friends at the races and started to have my own identity at the races, away from being Kenny's daughter or away from relying on my sister who had friends, that's when I started realizing, like, oh, like people at racing really accept you for who you are. Like you don't have to be something or act a certain way. Like you can find your group and niche. So anyway, back to what you asked before I go too far down the wrong path. No, that doesn't ever get thrown in. And dad and I get along really well. And dad will tell everybody that I'm probably the kid that acts the most like him. Um, but we don't fight, but we can like rub each other the wrong way a little bit when I think because I try to talk the business side of racing and he talks the driver side of racing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as everyone in the sport knows, those don't always see eye to eye. So it's he's the first one I want to talk to about it, but it's not that we don't always agree on everything.
It was Father's Day just recently over the weekend. It's important that you talked about your dad because I know he's more than just a dad to you. He's like your hero. Another dad in America that I rate as an absolute mega dad is the dad of
Oh,
this kid. And he's
yeah.
just tuned in here at the moment. I know that Jim Udemark is tuned in. One of the most amazing people I've ever known. That family, when I first met them, they were in the media room, as you know, with Angie and Jim and of course the Cunninghams. Everyone with this tight little group back in 2015 or 16, I think thereabouts. And there was that beautiful picture that Jason Johnson took. Remember when Carson was asleep on the floor at the
Yeah.
Hudson, and Jason sort of curled up and they took a picture. So I actually I'm very proud. I took this picture and I took that picture of Carson with his golf.
Oh,
Um, I didn't realize what a big thing senior pictures are, Kendra, when I first
oh
came.
yeah, it's a big deal. I think that I have one in a checkered jacket, very classy. If you didn't know what I loved, you knew after that picture. That picture said it all. But you're right about the Unimarks. Like they're one of my favorite families. I got to be very close to Jim and Angie when I lived in Knoxville and worked out there, and still would consider them two of my very best friends. And when I was in Knoxville for that 24-hour period, I was lucky to get to see them for a few hours, and we'll spend a lot of time with them in August. So
Yeah.
um, love watching Jim's creativity come to life out there. Like he just has a passion for Knoxville that they definitely needed.
As you know, there's two colors in a checkered flag. There's white and there's black, and the two work inherently together. On the weekend at a NASCAR race, there's a guy that's watching at the moment that waved the flags at the Cup race. Here, 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 here. Hello, Doug.
Yeah, he's like a little NASCAR celebrity now. I
Yes.
saw, I think it was Eric Arnold posted the other day that at the end of the weekend, their post about Doug flagging the NASCAR race, not anything to do with the race at Knoxville over the weekend, would be the most engaged, looked at post that Knoxville made all weekend. So it doesn't surprise me at all.
No, he's always been famous to us. There's no doubt about that. You talked about before, there's so much to get through with you, girl. It's just crazy. I remember reading a story, an interview with Julian Lennon, the son of John Lennon, and he was saying that when he was a little kid, before he went to school, every day they would drive down the driveway of their home at the big gated community, and there'd be hundreds of people cheering and chanting his name, Julian, Julian, and they'd be giving him all his presents. Uh, and then he finally went to the first day of school, and he started talking to the other kids, and he kind of worked out, not everyone else has hundreds of people standing outside the gates of their house. That was his normal, right? His normal was you go down the street and there's people chanting your name and give you presents. Your normal is the kind of normal that people would go, oh my gosh, Kendra, when you drive down the street from your dad's house that in Holmesville, your dad's there, and Brad Doty's in Apple Creek, and the Hordes are in Worcester, and Uncle Dean is in Worcester, and there's this incredible community that you grew up around. Yet it's not special to you. It is that you recognize the people in it, but they're not celebrities to you. Your extended family are royalty in our world.
Yeah, that is weird. Like that's weird to me. But I not that I will ever understand Julian Lennon's life, but I do remember, like I clearly, very vividly remember sitting in homeroom in junior high or middle school, I think everybody calls it now. And a kid goes, "Why do you have mud all over your shoes?" And of course, it was from the race weekend, right? It must have been like a Monday morning. And I honestly think it took me till that moment to realize, wait, not everyone does that. Like, not everyone goes to the races on the weekends. Not everyone picks up on Friday as soon as school's over and doesn't come back till late Sunday night. And yeah, to me, this is just so normal. Being at the racetrack is normal. Traveling so much is normal. Um, I don't know how to explain that except that when you're born into it,
Mm.
it is all you know. I've never known a life outside of racing. Um, there was a period in my career where I worked for 2 years outside of the sport thinking I'm done. I want out. Um, I think after only about 6 months, I was like, bad decision. That was horrible. I have to get back to the motorsports side. Um, and honestly, like I don't know what the future holds for my career. I don't know if I'll end my professional part of my life still in racing or not. I think at this point I'm really afraid to learn something new because it would be learning completely new. Like even when I was in NASCAR and people would decide like, oh, I'm trying to get off the road, I want to do this. Well, there's not a lot of jobs in NASCAR that aren't traveling jobs. So people would start to apply with like NFL, NBA, Major
Mm.
League Baseball. And even those professional sports are like, we just don't think you'll understand what we do. Racing is so
Oh.
different. So it's really like, what's it called when you like you back yourself into a corner a little bit? Like that's where what's it called when actors are too when everybody thinks of them a certain way, but that's kind of what
When you
happened to us.
stereotype. Yep, yep.
Stereotypes. So
Mhm.
we became like in the racing stereotype, and other sports were like racing is such a niche sport. It's not like us. So we would have to teach you from the ground up. So even to go into another sport
Yeah,
is a completely different world. So it's a little scary at my age to think like, where will my career go for the end of it? And how did I become the one that's the oldest one on the road? How did I become the veteran? Like no one wants to be that. No one wants to be called that. But here I am. So this is all I've known. It's easy to be passionate about something, and it's easy to be good at something if you inherently know it. You don't
yeah.
have to study it. You don't have to learn it. You just know it.
The you mentioned before about sitting up in the stands and reading a book, something that just couldn't happen anymore. It might be the 2024 spec version of Kendra might have had an iPad, but she certainly would have had her phone. But before that, when you were growing up on the road, when your dad was running the 7-2 winners car and stuff like that, and the T-Dub team, and there was only open wheel. The only way you could find
Mhm.
out about this sport was to read about it in a magazine that came once a month in Australia. And if you were lucky enough to know someone like Fat Rat always subscribed to it. But I remember going to Hales Corners, Wisconsin in 92 for the first time and seeing the Outlaws and standing at the fence when the engine starts. It's like, they're real. Like it was this, Horde was in the Pennzoil car, which changed my life. Sammy was in the TMC car. Steve was in the Valvoline car. Andy Hillenberg. I know I just mentioned that just for you because I know you're a bit
Mm.
like that over Andy.
Yes,
But
very
they
much.
were. I was like being inside the Lions enclosure, and thinking that they were real. So when you fast forward on all these years later, and I go and have lunch with Brad Doty in Apple Creek or in Worcester, and he says, "Have you been out to see Jack yet?" And I go, like that was 30 years ago, Kendra, that I first saw Jack, right? And Brad goes, Have you been out to see him? Like he'd be expecting you. And you go, how did my life get to this where my childhood hero is saying, are you going to come out to my house and say hello? And that's been your life, your whole life.
Yeah, but I mean, I get that way now with some people. I mean, there are still people that are in my cell phone or calls I'll get from
Yeah.
certain people that I'm like, that is so random. Like that is, I mean, honestly, one of my bosses is one of the greatest motorsports drivers in the world, and I think will be so in history. And to be able to say that's my boss is that hits me sometimes. Like, how lucky am I that people are like, "Oh my God, Kyle Larson," and I'm like, "Hey, what do you think of this weekend?" Like that even it still gets surreal sometimes. Like I don't take it 100% for granted. Um, but yeah, like I grew up with Jack. I grew up with Brad. Like they were not uncles, but basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've lived a very blessed, charmed life, and that is not something I take for granted.
If I'm glad you're not still in NASCAR because I want you back in our world. But gosh, I can imagine how much fun you'd be having with SVG right now and Cam Waters
Oh,
and Will Brown, because there is about to be, hold on tight, America, there's about to be a flood of Aussie supercar drivers. And SVG's a Kiwi, but Cam Waters is a badass as well from Mildura here in Australia. There's going to be a flood of those guys. And America has really embraced the Aussies coming up there and kicking a bit of ass, hasn't it?
yeah, I mean, I think it's necessary, first of all.
Yeah.
I think we need more storylines, and I'm not reducing them to a storyline. I don't want
No,
that to
no.
be what comes out of this, but they bring an interest level to the sport that wasn't there before. So if we can get Australian fans interested in American motorsport beyond sprint car racing, which is
Yeah.
amazing, but I think that just helps motorsports and as a whole. And with F1 coming in, the international interest in motorsports right now is probably the highest it's ever been. More people are watching every form of motorsports than probably we've ever had in history. So it's important to look for those opportunities and to look for those people and the personalities, and beyond that look for those people who also have talent, which is rare. And if you find those people and put them in the perfect package, which look, him landing, and I'm talking about SVG
Yeah,
here, landing with Justin Marks, jackpot.
yeah.
I mean, it's just the perfect fit. He's in the exact right place for him in America. He's going to be treated well. He's instantly winning races, which instantly makes people like him. So, I mean, we're basically going to call him an American and steal him from you guys soon.
He's a New Zealander, so that's okay.
See it? How bad is that? I did not know
Hey, it's
that.
no different to Scott McLaughlin. Like Scott McLaughlin, was a young Kiwi that moved to Australia and raced his supercar career in Australia, and then Will Power, he's bona fide, right? He's a Queenslander.
Yeah.
Will Power is an Aussie and has been for years. Kendra, you're in the absolute cutting edge of sprint car promotion at the moment with the High Limit series. You watch trends all the time. You and I talked when I saw you last in Worcester about the Formula One Netflix series, which has been pivotal in growing the market in America. And I think I'm going to say to you without hesitation that Daniel Ricciardo is one of your absolute favorites. That is a guy that is right on the cusp of not being a Formula One driver. Yet if Formula One are half paying attention, they'd be too scared to let him go, Kendra, because he's become a bit of he's on like Ellen DeGeneres and Drew Barrymore and shows like that in mainstream America, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Ricciardo is probably the most well-known beyond Verstappen and Lewis, I guess. I would put him probably third.
Yeah.
The thing that he has that the other two don't, I believe, is charisma.
Mm.
Lewis and Max might have it. They just aren't willing to be vulnerable and show it. And Daniel obviously is. Do I think that he could still be a massive asset to F1, even if he's not behind the wheel? Absolutely. I do lean a little bit towards if you're not performing in F1, it might be time to go because there's only 20 spots. And if there's someone out there that could fill one of the spots and contend for wins, maybe it's time to give someone a chance. And that's not saying I don't want Daniel in a car. If Daniel could get into a car where he was competitive and winning, I would absolutely F1's better with him in it. But in my point of view, with only 20 seats, you've got to get the young drivers and the next driver in there that can win races.
And I think that's what puzzles me a little bit about Liberty's refusal to allow the Andretti's in. That's really surprised me. They're very obvious. They're not pro-America. I mean, I think that's probably the reality. They're not pro-America. Otherwise, Andretti's would be in there, wouldn't they?
It's from an American fan standpoint, it seems very confusing to me because they want Americans to love them. So they do all this stuff to make Americans fans. So like, yes, Drive to Survive is for the world, but I think America probably gravitated towards it the most. So now America has 3 Grand Prix, which I think is the most in history in a single year. So obviously the American fan base is important to them, but we don't want an American team. They must not really want American drivers because they don't really do anything to pursue that. And let's be honest, and I'm not saying this because he's my boss, but if you wanted an American driver that was going to bring the fan base, you'd be chasing Kyle Larson.
Yes.
And then this is probably the smallest on the ladder, but when you look at the start time of Las Vegas, that was not for American fans.
Yes.
They put a race in America, but had it start at a time that's for European fans. So I will never understand that one. And then probably my biggest frustration with F1 and people, this is a good conversation / argument, but people will say they don't want everyday fans at their races because I hate the cost of attending an F1 race. It makes me sick. It's like, why wouldn't you want dad to bring his kids and the whole family to come and mom to enjoy it? Because I do believe there's probably more female fans of F1 than any other form of motorsport, which is really interesting to me. So you have this opportunity to include everyone, but they price everybody out. And it's bad. And maybe that's an American thing. Maybe it's not that way at other races. America's going through that right now with Taylor Swift concerts. Like, it's way too expensive to go to a Taylor Swift concert in America. It's cheaper to fly to Europe, get tickets there, stay in a hotel, and fly back than it is to get one ticket in America. So maybe if I went to an F1 race in Europe, it would be cheaper and more cost effective, and people don't feel that way. But I think there's a lot that is conflicting or confusing of what F1's goals are with the American fan. It
So
just doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think the thing that determines value of something, Kendra, is perception. And Formula One, when you go right back to the Bernie Ecclestone era, and when NASCAR was arguably at its peak, when Bill France was at the helm, when you had a benevolent dictator, was that they go, we don't care that you see a thing on the internet that says it's $1,200 for a platter of mini sliders in Miami to go to a Formula One race, because they have always wanted that exclusive. You can't just walk the grid of an F1 race, right? So they have deliberately positioned F1 up here. I'm okay with that. I don't watch Formula One. I really don't. What I love is that we don't perceive or position ourselves, you and I, we don't position ourselves in that place. This year for Sprint Car Speed Week, Kendra, the race between Murray Bridge, Mount Gambier, you've got to see Bordertown. They have built square inch by square inch Pevely in South Australia. They got the GPS mapping. The whole thing is literally like a 3D printing of Pevely in South Australia. And Avalon and Warrnambool, the 5-night series has adopted wholly the high limit series as the format. So Australian fans and teams have said, we need to change. High Limit have taken the hard road. They've gone out there and chopped everything down to one heat on the track, finished by 9:30, and we're doing the same with Speed Week. That's a really big an upper to you guys. Has there been any feedback or pushback at all when you very first started High Limit for the more compact, almost like home run derby kind of format?
No, I've never seen a complaint of getting done early. I've seen plenty of complaints of getting done too late. I've never seen a complaint of getting done too early. For me personally, I love getting done early. I'm old. I don't like being up till midnight or 1 a.m. working. I don't think anybody truly enjoys that. But when you get done early, the key to me is that all the drivers are more accessible because they are also not exhausted and worn out if we're done by 9:30. So you open that pit gate and it is a flood of people. So all of them get to spend more time and interact and engage more with these drivers because they're not necessarily in a massive hurry to pack it up and get to the next track. So that is very much by design. And that is probably the number one goal every night from the owners of High Limit to Mike Hess and down to all of us is we've got to keep the show moving. So kudos to everyone on the competition side because they do that every night. That has nothing to do with me. And I feel like High Limit's really into a rhythm right now. And we've been hitting that time frame on a consistent basis. And the fans have noticed it. The drivers and teams have noticed it. That's going to continue to be the ultimate number one goal each night is like get done early, get fans in to meet drivers engage with the fans. And then like, let's say we're at Knoxville, right? And you're done at 9:30. You know who should be real happy when you're done at 9:30 at Knoxville? AJ across the street at Dingus. Because now the fans who are like, well, man, this is early. I don't want to go to bed yet. They can still go do whatever they want. They have options. So, I mean, I would see on nights when I was at Knoxville, we get done early and Dingus was packed because no one's like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I got to get home. And then one of the key factors of all of this that I'd be remiss to not mention is children are still awake to watch the feature.
Yep.
Parents aren't picking up sleeping children and leaving before the A main even begins. So I think all of those, when you add up all of those factors, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. And all it is not, sorry, I've got a noisy Baxter. All it is not dragging your feet. Like, yes, you're going to have red flags. You're going to have cautions. You're going to have nights where track prep becomes an issue. But most nights, it's just keeping the show moving at a quick pace.
You got to pick him up. You got to show us Baxter. Well, for those people that don't know.
I can, but Baxter is very sick. So,
Aww.
Baxter has gone completely blind.
Oh,
So, yeah, it's I don't want to show Baxter.
okay.
I mean, hold on, that's mean to him. Hold on a second.
Yeah, he's
Here you go.
beautiful, the little man.
Come here. Come here. Oh, okay.
Ah, hey Baxter. Hey Baxter boy. He's the boss of the house, that guy right there.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes.
You know, the thing that
Um,
fascinates Aussies when they go over to America more than anything is how inclusive a dog is in public service. Like, people fly on aeroplanes with dogs. People take them into the Delta Club or the United Club. Like, it's like, I'm taking my dog. It's like
yeah.
dogs are people in America.
Well, in most places anymore, you can take your dog, especially if they have like outdoor coffee shops, breweries, whatever. You can take your dog and they have water bowls out for them.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of places have snacks specifically for your dog that you can buy while you're there. Um, Baxter has had many. He's very spoiled. So he gets his what they call a pup cup at Starbucks.
Oh,
And
yes.
then he'd get a vanilla cup of ice cream at Cone Corner in Knoxville every year for his birthday. So very, very spoiled dog. Like, I don't know if you can tell. Very spoiled.
He looks happier now, Kendra. Um,
Uh,
we talked
maybe. I
about
think he was.
you and I often talk about how sprint car racing has done so much for little cities. And a really good example of when I went over to visit your great friends, the Kaufmans, over in Pennsylvania. And I teased him that Kenny Jacobs has his, Holmesville, the home of sprint car driver, Kenny Jacobs, and yet they don't. Keith doesn't, and that blows my mind because that little town doesn't have a huge amount of any other worldwide celebrity. Apple Creek with Brad Doty, places like that. All those places we grew up with. Worcester. Now, Worcester is a big place and it's pretty arty, right? It's pretty. It's a college town, isn't
Is
it?
it?
It's pretty. I thought it was pretty arty. There's the architecture and the street stuff. It's a pretty eclectic place. Um, that's something I wish I actually wrote to the city that the Kaufmans live in and said, "Hey, do you know that this guy is revered all over the world, because of your town and the man from?" And they've never written back. And I was really devastated because I think that that's where people like us learn about these tiny little places. Who would know about Holmesville if not for your dad?
True story. Last night, I'm looking through Twitter, right? And it's like Jim Cantori, which is a famous like weather man in America. And if he comes to your town, there's probably a hurricane or some natural disaster coming. But anyway, he tweeted about this massive heat wave that was hitting. And I'm like, I can't tell what that picture is. So I zoomed in to see what town will I recognize. And I saw a town called Beaver Dam. And I was like, oh, it's Wisconsin. That's how I know. That's how I know where this picture is. So exactly what you're saying. I know locations by the small towns, the little map dots. Um, and that's really what dirt racing is. Like, yes, we have some events. We had a big race at Texas Motor Speedway, which is basically in Fort Worth. And then you have I'm trying to think of other ones that are in big cities or close to big cities. Um, they don't always work because in big
Yeah.
cities, those fans have a lot of options, a lot of things they can do with their Friday or Saturday night. But when you go to these small towns, like where I grew up, I legitimately cannot go to the grocery store, go out to eat without seeing a racing shirt in Worcester, Ohio. They're everywhere. More often than not now, they're all Sheldon. So I see Sheldon stuff
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
But in this town, with Wayne County Speedway being 10 minutes away, that's where everyone spent their Saturday nights because there's nothing else to do. So we made a racing town, and I know that we're not the only place like that. I mean, you look at Port Royal, same situation. Like that is the place to be on Saturday nights. That's where everyone in town goes. If you want to see your neighbor, you got to go to Port Royal. That's where they're at. And I think that that's probably happened to a lot of small towns. Look at Knoxville. I
Yeah.
mean, that I just had Bob Hawkers with NASCAR sent me a text the other night when he was at the race at Knoxville for the first time ever.
Huh.
And he said, I did not realize turns 1 and 2 are like on the road. I'm like, yeah, it's in town. It's not like, oh, a few miles outside. No, Knoxville is in town. And I think that's something like a NASCAR fan would always be shocked by.
So I'm going to out him. Cam Waters' dad, Chris. He's a former modified sedan racer in Australia, badass. His other son, Cam's older brother, Jared, is a two-time national champion on the dirt as well in sedan racing. And he's like, hey, we're going to be going to Knoxville. Yeah, who should I catch up with? We really want to do this because Cam just raced in Sonoma. And he's like, hey, who should I catch up with? I'm like, well, you need to catch up with Jason Reed and Jim Udemark and Tony Bockhoven. And, so I'm loading him all up these names. So like 3 a.m. the other night, I get this message, this text. Sorry, it's so late, mate. We're just going to try and find the racetrack. How far is it? He's in Tennessee. And
No.
that has got to happen so much more often than people realize. I don't imagine that Americans make that mistake, but if you're
Oh, no,
traveling
they
to
do.
America from Australia for the first time, it's Knoxville, Iowa. And remember our experience with Logan Lucky, right? One of the great, I really love this movie. We had a chance, you were going to have Channing Tatum at the Knoxville Nationals. Remember when they were going to promote Logan Lucky? And then
Oh
what
yeah,
happened,
they
Kendra?
were asking us. They
Yeah,
they
then what
wanted to
happened?
come to the race. They were like, we're gonna bring the film, like the cast to the Knoxville Nationals. We're gonna promote Logan Lucky. We're in town. And I'm like, that's awesome. And we were talking back and forth, like this was going to be huge. But no, they were in Tennessee the whole time. They had no idea that Knoxville was in Iowa. I mean, I literally just had someone in racing reach out like a week ago and say, hey, my dad and I are in Tennessee. Tell us the right places to eat at Knoxville. And I'm like, well, I lived in Knoxville, Iowa. So I don't really know where to eat in Knoxville, Tennessee. And it's like you can feel their embarrassment. And it's like, no, it happens. It happens a lot. Like, don't be embarrassed. Like then when we had the NASCAR Truck Series at Knoxville, we had several people need to cancel their tickets because they thought it was in Tennessee, not Iowa, even though everything says Knox. It's why we started adding Knoxville, Iowa to a lot of our merchandise and apparel at Knoxville when I was there.
Alan Haynes has just tuned in. Hainesy, amongst many other things, was a very good racer himself back in the day in Western Australia, and he started a team, HM Racing, with Scott Milling, and they had Randy Hannigan drive for them on the World Series Sprint Cars Tour. And then in later years, Alan joined up with Jason Johnson Racing and actually funded his shop over in the US. And Hainesy lives up in Mackay, a beautiful part of North Queensland. But it was a very, very cool time for the sport. Western Australia is my home. It'll always be my home, even though I haven't lived there for, gosh, even a third of my life. But you know yourself, Kendra, no matter where you have lived over your years, OHIO is always your home.
Yeah, yes, but and I just told Van Halen, if she's still listening this the other day, Knoxville actually feels more like home to me.
Yeah.
My family is here, and like you can't replace family, but Knoxville actually, when I'm there, feels more like home. I feel more
Yeah.
at peace with myself. And it wasn't always like that. Like I had some rough years when I would move back and forth, but I think it was meeting people like Christy and the Udemarks and having like building really good foundational friendships with people that's what changed everything. And I know their kids' names and some of their kids' friends, and I would go to their sporting events, and it became a second home. But now when I go back, I drive through Knoxville and I'm like, oh, like they're
Yeah.
just I mean, it was only 6 summers, but it felt like so much more.
Well, that sounds like a song title. It was only 6 summers, but it felt like so much more. We get Jake Owens to record that.
Yeah, there we go.
You're working in an industry that is not unique in this context. The world is so hyper reactive. Dominic Selzy the other day used a term when I talked to him, and I loved it. He goes, if we just weren't so tender. And I was like, what a great way of putting it. He used the word tender instead of reactive, instead of bitchy, instead of
Offended.
sarcastic, easily offended. I really liked his word tender. I know, because I know you, Kendra, you wear your heart on your sleeve. You get very personally offended by things that are just people firing off on X, Tinder, whatever, Twitter, all those platforms. It's hard not to. How do you balance that? Because people are so passionate anymore, but they just don't seem to care how a comment can cut.
It's been hard. This year specifically has been very hard. And I think I went from Knoxville, that was like the most beloved place in all of
Yeah.
dirt racing. So there were times when I felt like I couldn't do anything wrong at Knoxville. And then I
Yeah.
go to high limit, which is polarizing. And there are times, and I shouldn't even say times, there are people, it does not matter what we do, it will never be right.
No.
They just fundamentally do not like high limit. And I think that's been really hard for me. I went from being like, oh, she's at Knox, so I love her, to be like, oh, we don't even want her around. We don't even want
Yeah.
to talk to her.
Yeah.
She went to the dark side, and it's that's been really hard because I know the intent and I know what our goals are, and it's
Yeah.
so for the right reasons. So that's been really difficult. Um, I think finally, after going through some really nasty, very public um, attacks, and what really struck me with that was that it moved from social media into email.
Mm.
And
Definitely.
it's like you can choose not to look at social media. I can't choose not to get on my email and go to work. So once it moved to that, I had had enough. And the block button has become my best friend.
Mm.
I think with social media, it becomes expected that you just let everybody in. And in that instant, I realized being a part of my life or being even from a very long distance in social media, that still to me is something that I should protect
Yeah.
and not dictate who's in it, but still be it's a
Mm.
privilege
Yep.
to be a part of someone's life. Even if it's social media, it doesn't mean that you have that they're fair game. It doesn't mean that you can do or say whatever you want to that person and they have to accept it. And I think that was one of the hard parts is the first reaction was, oh, toughen up, buttercup, deal with it. And in this sport, you're going to get that instead of we have to change our sport. We have to change how we talk to people. We have to change how we treat people. We
Yeah.
have to change the words that we use. I think that shift has started. I think it still has miles and miles and miles to go.
Yeah.
Um, we need more people to speak out and say this is not okay. I think one of and this is probably in every sport, which is an overarching issue of why is all of this bullying and negativity okay in
Yeah.
sports, but you wouldn't like if someone was a teacher at school and they were getting harassed in their email, the
Yes.
principal would not say, better just toughen up and take it. So why do we do that in this sport? But I think one of the problems in our sport are these fake people that
Yeah.
hide behind cutesy names or fake personas, and they think that gives them like, oh, look at me, I'm funny, and I'm gonna attack
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
and it's hilarious. It's not. And the people who follow them or engage with them, like you're encouraging
Yeah.
attacking people you don't even know. And that has real emotional and mental consequences. And
Yeah. It does.
it just it has put people in dark places. It put me in a dark place. And to think about like when you work in this sport, it's not a 9 to 5 job. You are giving up your life for
Yeah.
this job. And to do that and then also be talked to like that or treated like that and be and for people to think it's okay and to see people like, haha, that's funny.
You
It
know,
it makes you really question what you've
yeah,
dedicated your life to.
it's a backhanded compliment for our industry, Kendra, that we are accessible. You couldn't do this with a Major League Baseball player and have the personal cut through, right? You couldn't just get onto Luca and suddenly send him a Facebook message or bag him out on Facebook, and there would be multiple layers of defense, not on the court, in social media defense before you even got to a point where someone like him would see that. The backhanded compliment for us is because you are so accessible, Kendra. There she is. She's in the bleachers just there. There she is. She's in the infield. There Kyle is. I can walk up to him and get him an autograph. I spoke to Donnie at the Jackson Motorplex just on a Saturday morning. He said, he turned to me, he was real serious. He said, I hate social media. I hate it. He goes, back in the day, if you had a problem with the 11 car, you had to spend $40 to buy a pit pass. You had to walk down the pits, stand there when you wanted to talk to him, and then you would puss out because he was huge when you got there and you were too scared to say anything. He says, now I just create my own little thing there and I just bang it out on socials and I can attack the greatest sprint car driver in the world because I'm a Sammy fan. Bad analogy, but a similar analogy. So I don't know how we fix that, because I talk to my friends in the AFL industry and football, and they say, wait, it's prevalent in our industry too. I take it personally. I'm like, we're such a niche sport and we're killing ourselves here. Why are we eating our own ass, pardon the expression, every time there's something positive? Now, in November, we're going to have a sprint car race in the center of the Adelaide 500 supercar race. They're building like the IMS BC race in the center of Indy is going to happen in the center of the Adelaide Parkland supercar race. And there's a good chance if it works, it's going to happen at Bathurst. It's going to happen at Townsville. It could be a model that could go with every supercar race. But some of our fans are going, oh, the track's going to be dusty. Where are they going to park the transport? Shut up. Supercars, sprint cars. That's massive for us. Just focus. Remember that little point about when you focus with your camera, all you see is what you focus on, right?
Yeah, this is my favorite, right? Like, I'm going to the races this weekend. You want to go with me? Like, I want to take all my buddies. Like, come to the races. Well, you said that the races were shit last week, and you said it was really dirty, and you said like it wasn't a good race, and you didn't like the guy who won, and you were miserable, and you would never spend money there again. So why now do you think we all want to go with you? So if you want to just slowly kill this sport and make sure no one ever goes again, then have at it. Keep going. But then don't complain. The next week you're complaining there's not enough people in the grandstands. I wonder why.
Yeah.
And you're also going to stop a lot of good people from working in this sport. Why would someone in their 20s right now want to come in and dedicate their life to this, to be attacked every single day?
Yeah, because unless they had a history in it where they grew up in it like you or I, then
you've got to invest in your future, and that's our fans too.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I can say, and it doesn't seem to sink into people, but words carry weight. Everyone's words are valuable, and it used to just be media, right? Well, with social media, words carry weight. Everybody's words have value. So use that time and use your platform to do something good for the sport you must love. If you're obsessed with it enough, you must love it. Wouldn't you want to leave a good, lasting impact on it and not be the person that tried to single-handedly tear it down?
So maybe the term that we should use is let the weight you carry in our sport be your butt on the bleachers. Right? That's how you
tell people good things. Like, you want them to come and you want to share your passion. Everybody wants to share their passion, right? Like,
absolutely.
You don't watch a great show and tell all your buddies don't watch it. It's terrible. Like, you want to talk to them about it. You want to
have you seen Ted Lasso? Like, how good is it? That's what drives people, right, to that stuff.
Yes.
When I look at my Instagram,
oh my gosh, I really want to talk to somebody about this show, but it's awful. Don't watch it.
I love Kendra. When I look at you, when my Instagram page comes up, I see people like this. Now, I love that Mark Martin was someone that you worked with in your life in public relations. And, the guy underneath there is like one of the coolest cats in the game in junior. I love that when you look back on it, you have worked. If you were to stop for some reason doing what you're doing, and don't, because I'll kill you dead. You have worked with some of the most amazing people in NASCAR and sprint car racing, haven't you?
Oh, I have led a blessed life. I have had life experience and have worked with some incredible people and
Yeah.
have been able to do incredible things in my life. Mark was probably my favorite driver I've ever worked with. The wisdom that would come out of that man's mouth, just so easily, like free flowing. There are things Mark said that still stick with me in my head today. He made a very lasting impact on my life. That is a man who is grateful for life.
Yeah.
He doesn't see much negative in life. And he really it's hard to be around him and be an angry person.
Yeah, that's what we need. We need more of that. My friend Mark Baker. Oh, I love that. Hainsey just put hats off to this lady. What an asset to the sport. I love that,
Oh,
Hainsey. Yeah,
thank
she
you.
she absolutely is. My friend Mark Baker is a big South Australian business man here in Australia who's making his first ever trip to the Knoxville Nationals. I got the team, Jason, the team to tell him whereabouts he should buy his seats and everything, and he's pumped to come along. And your great friend, my very favorite cheerleader, Mindy Stevens, has just tuned in as well. Um, what does Mark Baker expect from the Knoxville Nationals experience? He's watching now. What should he expect when he rolls into the Nationals?
Wait, I'm going to ask so many follow-up questions. Do we know when he's getting there?
I think he's going to be there in time for like the Tuesday, Wednesday. I think he's going to Peevely for
Okay.
Ironman and stuff
So
like
he's
that.
coming just for the 410s.
Yes, yes.
So when he rolls into town, it's already going to be explosive. So you get into that town and instantly like your heart rate just goes up because you're like something awesome
Yep.
is happening here.
Yep.
But I think the biggest thing that I try to tell people coming to nationals is like, come all day. Like I know that we're very conditioned to what time do the gates open,
Yeah.
what time are cars on track, and you come just for that and then you leave. Knoxville is an all like interactive experience. I mean, from the very beginning in the morning, clear through really till the next morning, it just keeps going. It's like a 7-Eleven. It's never closed, right? So it
Or
becomes
Casey.
like the racetrack that doesn't sleep for really 10 days. But for the 4 days he's going to be there, just there's so much entertainment and so much care and work that goes into entertaining you. People want you to love every minute you're there, not just the minutes you're in the seats watching the race. They want you to love every minute that you're there because you paid for a plane ticket and you paid for hotel rooms. You
Yeah.
didn't just pay for tickets. This is your vacation. It needs to feel like one. So, how can you continuously entertain people that they look when the cars get on the track? It could be the worst Knoxville Nationals ever. A driver could
Mhm.
run away with it. There's never a pass for the lead. It's like, well, that was done in like, I don't know what time it is
Yeah,
now, like
yeah.
9 minutes
Yep.
or whatever. Like, that's done. Okay, well, that was okay, I guess. But the time they're in those bleachers is really only about 30% of the time they're there. What about the other 70%? Because if you show them a good time and they have fun,
Yep.
they're going to keep coming back, even if that 1% of the 30% might not have been like the greatest. Not every Nationals can be the 2016 Nationals.
Hmm.
That was the greatest ever. Not everyone can be that, but you can still make sure they have the greatest week ever. And I think
Yeah.
Knoxville just pays so much attention to that, that's what sets it apart from every other track or event in the
Yeah.
country.
Some of my friends recently bought push bikes. They just went and bought bicycles from like from Walmart or wherever. That is
Wait,
my
what's a push bike?
that's my bicycle.
But
We
why do you
call them,
say push bike?
that's what we call them, push bikes. You push pedals.
Oh,
That's what it's an Aussie
oh,
thing.
okay. So, or just a
Yeah.
bike.
Get a mountain
Okay.
bike, not an e-bike.
Okay.
Basically, you have to pedal a sucker.
Oh,
But
e-bikes are all the thing, right?
I
Okay.
know. Bernie Stupkin, hello, Bernie Stupkin. Cool, good job, him and Betsy, the amazing IRP team. Ride your bike into town. Knoxville is not North Lincoln Street. That's where the racetrack is. It's where Dingus is. It's where Hy-Vee is, where you can get methanol moonshine along with Fairway at the other end of town. But there is a
That's a
square
great pitch.
with the incredible Atlantic Pacific pub with 3 or 4 great Chinese restaurants, with a cinema.
They
There's
have
so many
3
great
Mexican
things.
restaurants now.
What's that?
There's a 3rd Mexican
I
restaurant in
know. I
Knoxville,
know.
right on the square. And then, like, I'm a big fan of Coffee Connection.
Yes.
So I mean, I lived like
Yeah.
catty corner to it basically. But like I love on Knoxville mornings riding my bike downtown and getting a coffee. Because let me tell you, the Coffee Connection is mostly locals, right? So if
Yes.
you sit in there and you just sip your coffee and you listen,
Yes.
you're gonna know
Yes.
everything going on in that town. And if you do it during nationals, now you know everything going on in the town. You know how the town people feel about it. And you probably know some stuff that happened at the track that you didn't know before you got there. And you're like, what? When did that happen? But like Martha that lives in town knows everything.
Yes, the red
Yeah,
eye.
Coffee
Get the red
Connection, a
eye.
great
That red
spot.
eye coffee, that goes. And this is a good example, Kendra. Even with franchises in town. So I go to Scooters each day. I'm away just before the track and get a big long ice black, right? Because it's always too hot to drink coffee in the day. The last day that I was there last year, as I drove away, on top of my cup, they'd written, "Have a safe trip home. We'll miss you."
Oh,
Right now,
see,
that's
that's
just
so Knoxville.
that's Knoxville.
That's
Absolutely.
so Knoxville. I love it.
Yeah, me
It's
too.
it's
And
just
if you go to A&P,
even
you
the
probably see the
people.
Jacobs having Bloody Marys and stuff first thing in the mornings. And so there's a lot of star spotting going on, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, there's just you get and now and it bleeds over into other towns too. Like everybody's taking advantage of this 25,000 people that just showed up
Yeah.
in Iowa. And all of them have something to do. Like if you go to Knoxville and you're like, I'm bored, I can promise you, you either A, you're in Knoxville, Tennessee, or B, you just did not even try. Like you didn't even try to meet people or try to leave your hotel room. Like
Yeah.
you step foot on property and it is a buzz that is unlike any other dirt track or dirt event.
Every other country has very parochial, state proud people, right? So Western Australia is not going to tell you, oh, you need to go to Victoria. It's the best state. It's amazing. Queensland's never going to say, go to South Australia. Yet here is an Ohio girl pumping the sugar honey iced tea out of Iowa, and that's what sets it apart. The mighty Hawkeyes, go the Hawks. It is called a flyover state. People outside of Iowa call Iowa a flyover state. I'm like, what's a flyover? You fly over it.
Yeah,
No.
there's no reason to stop there.
Yeah. Come on. Des Moines is the friendliest airport in the world, Kendra, isn't it? Like you can
Of course,
literally be.
and Des Moines is just an awesome city. If you go and you have even a day, go to Des Moines. But I would say like anyone in the motorsports world now, they don't consider Iowa a flyover state.
Yeah.
Like Knoxville has made its mark 100%.
And it's Des Moines, not Des Moines. Okay. A lot
Yeah,
of,
Des Moines.
yeah, I'm sure you know when someone's a rookie, right? Where are you staying? I'm staying in Des Moines. It's great.
No, no, you're not. I don't know where that's at. I hope you have fun there.
How
I
many?
haven't been to that part yet.
So Whitey has just said, great point, Kendra. Example is Newton. And they don't say Newton, they say Newton. For some reason, the T gets lost there. This weekend, Knoxville benefited to Newton for the NASCAR weekend. And Newton is the same thing when nationals come in. So there's that whole, and Jersey freezes out that way, by the way, as well. The banana split.
So good.
I know Tony Bockover will tell you got to get the announcers special, but the banana split is legendary.
Well, they just had a strawberry rhubarb pie freezer, and I'm so mad I didn't get it.
I love how
Yeah,
passionate you are about food. Americans are so passionate about food. It's like,
no,
oh my
I'm a
God,
horrible foodie.
did you hear about the new burger? I'm like, let me guess. It's got bacon and it's got cheese in it. Well, yeah, but it's the way they put the bacon in it. Anyway, I love that you're so passionate. High limit. How long to go? How many more rounds?
Our next race will be the halfway mark. So we are 29 in. I mean, granted, we've lost some due to rain. So we race Lake Ozark a week from Wednesday. So 9 days. When that one gets in, we are at the halfway point, which seems surreal. Like I don't how did we get here? Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Already have thoughts for 2025, already working on 2025.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't not in
No.
this sport. If you slow down, you get passed. You're done. So yeah, it's I think we're all like, whew. And we have a little break right now because high limit wants its drivers to be able to compete in every big event.
Yeah.
So like we didn't race last weekend, so all of our guys could go run Knoxville. And we're not going to race this coming weekend, so all of our guys can go run the big race at Huset's.
Yeah.
So for people like me, like of course Brad's there, like he's still racing, so he doesn't get it off, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I get 12 days, 12 consecutive days at home in the middle of a race season. So that's probably one of the things I love the most about high limit is these breaks. Like I love having this time to catch my breath. And it's weird. Like when I'm on the road, I was like, oh, I just want to go home. I'm so tired. And then after this 12 days, I'll be like, let's go. Like ready to get back to the track after 12 days. Like I'm ready to go. So it's a really good mix. And there's so many big races coming up that it's like we race, we take a break, we race, we take a break, we race. And then Brad was really big on there needs to be a summer break. So everyone can go on vacation with their families.
Yeah.
They can go back to their race shops and rebuild their cars if they need to. They can go race more if they want to. Like we don't care, but there is a dedicated summer break. So I'm very lucky that I have a full-time, full traveling job and I get 9 days to go to Florida with my family. It's not something that's probably ever been able for anyone to do in this sport before. But now like everyone in high limit has that option. I think a lot of them will keep racing. But they're like, oh, I'm so burned out.
Yeah.
And then you give them a break and they keep racing.
That's because, Kendra, that Kyle and Brad are both at a different point in their lives where they have young children and they see a different focus. There's a balance. And I'm seeing that as well with the teams on the road with us on Speed Week. Nick Speed is a good example. Those sort of guys that back in the day, they didn't have kids. They were just like, let's race 12 nights out of 10. I don't care. Let's get on the road. Let's go race. Now they're like, all right, well then how do I work my children into this? So we all reach that. We all do that full circle and reach that balance point. I could easily talk to you for hours, Kendra. I love your passion for this. I love your energy. I love that even sometimes when you get a kick in the ass from that horrible, that ex community at times, that you still get up and you drag your ass out of bed and you go, no, this is still the greatest sport in the world. And I'm still going to tell people about it. I can't wait to see you at Knoxville and catch up with you. Well done on all the great work, and don't ever give up, girl. All right? Because you're too important to our industry. I love you and I miss you and I can't wait to see you soon.
What'd you say, 3 weeks?
Yeah.
All right. 3-week countdown. A&P first round's on me.
Oh, wow. Yes. All right.
That's just for you though. Don't tell the whole bar that. It's just a first round for you.
I know nothing. Yeah, have a wonderful night, love. Give Baxter a cuddle for me. Say hi, mum and dad and everybody, and we'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, Wade.
See you, love. Bye.
Bye.